What's going on, guys? Chris Grant here, and you are losing money and you probably don't even know it, or you do and you're just not doing anything about it. And in this video, we're going to share with you exactly how you're losing the money and how you can reclaim at least part of that money, hopefully all of it. Today, I've got Will from Axiom Prep Center with me. Will, I appreciate you hanging out and being willing to answer some of my questions, man.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be talking a little bit about reverse logistics. And what that is it's a really fancy word for dealing with death piles, which is how Amazon sellers and eBay sellers probably more frequently understand what we're going to be talking about. But you've got returns, you've got fraudulent returns, you've got items that have been switcherooed, and you've got all kinds of things that you need to deal with. And a lot of times they get thrown in a pile and you don't deal with them until maybe someone in your house complains, or you see a lot of sticky fingers grabbing what could be profitable inventory out of your pile of reserves that you need to get to. And Will and his team over at Axiom, they handle all of that stuff for you. And so I kind of want to dive down this rabbit hole, because I know I have money just sitting over here that I should handle, and I have not. And I know that a ton of other people are just like that. So, Will, I'm kind of curious. Can you tell me, like, what made you get into reverse logistics?
Yeah, so I got into the Amazon space as a seller, like I think a lot of Amazon service providers do. And specifically with returns, at the time that I was selling on Amazon, I was in college, living in a little one-bedroom apartment. So returns were a big issue. I didn't even have a garage to put my returns in. So returns stacked up. They were a big problem. I didn't deal with them. There was plenty of money sitting on the table for me. But I really got into it through my aunt. She is also a seller on Amazon. And I was telling her I wanted to start a business in the Amazon world. And she said, look, please take my returns. She said, can you get my returns? What's new? Can you send back to Amazon? What's used? Can you list on eBay? And that's kind of how it got started.
All right. So I'm curious, we all know how it works. If we get a return, we can have it sent to us, and we take a look at it. Maybe we send it back into Amazon. Maybe it needs to go into an eBay pile. But how do you guys, like, if I sign up with you and say, well, I need you to handle my returns, I can't deal with them anymore. Like, what do you guys do with all of the returns and the unsold inventory that you guys get from a seller?
Yeah, great question. So, and I think it's important to touch on kind of existing solutions as well. Because I think that's a lot of the problem on Amazon is there's just a lack of economically viable solutions to this issue. Sellers kind of have three options. They can either dispose of their inventory, and that's paying Amazon to throw away their inventory. There's also a somewhat significant environmental cost to that as well. They can liquidate their inventory if it's eligible. So that's, through B stock, and folks are getting anywhere from 1% to 5% of their sale price on those liquidations. So again, not a great option, no inventory visibility, no reimbursements. And then lastly, what we see folks doing is developing costly in-house solutions to try to deal with this inventory. And that's challenging. We see big brands do that. We see small sellers do that. It gets to be very chaotic when you don't have, a dedicated RMS software, when you don't have employees who are focused specifically on returns. It can be an issue and it can be costly. So that's kind of where we come in, and essentially we're a revenue recovery service for Amazon sellers. So
okay,
we get folks in. Go ahead.
I was just saying, can we walk through kind of the different ways that you recover that revenue?
Absolutely, yeah. So whether it's FBA or FBM returns, they come to our warehouse. And our first step is going to be trying to identify reimbursements. So there's a couple of different reimbursements that we file. And I'm sure if you're a seasoned Amazon seller, you know all about return fraud. But the first reimbursement that we're looking for is what's called switcheroos, as you had mentioned. So, let's say you're selling brand new Nike Jordan shoes, and a customer purchases your shoe and ships back a used pair of flip flops. That's a reimbursement that you're entitled to as a seller. That's fraud. And Amazon generally is giving those reimbursements on the front end, but a lot of the times they miss them. And so once those come back to us, we can identify if you have or have not been reimbursed for that product, and we can file a reimbursement if you haven't. So that's a large part of the reimbursements, and one that folks are very happy to get. And then secondly, we're filing reimbursements on damages that happen during the removal process. So let's say you had 100 units of a perfume in an FBA center, and you had the incorrect SDS sheet or something, or you got an IP claim. Those units become stranded and have to be removed out of Amazon. But by the time they get to our warehouse, the UPS guy threw it out of the back of the truck. It got, stepped on in the distribution center at UPS or whatever the case. And some of those bottles are broken, smashed. Again, that's a reimbursement that you're entitled to, and a reimbursement that we file. So
you're telling me that the people that work at UPS warehouses might sometimes use boxes as step ladders?
Yeah, absolutely. We see some crazy stuff. So those are common, and there's a couple other reimbursements that we file on a less frequent basis, but those are the highlights. And so after that process, we're providing a detailed inspection of this inventory. So we're looking for any signs of use. We're inspecting functionality. We're putting it through our system to check what's the disposition of this product. If it's a new product, so essentially after inspection, all of this inventory goes into a portal for our clients, and they can choose whether they want to send this inventory back to Amazon. That can be FBA or FBM, or they can choose to list it on eBay. And lastly, they can choose to dispose of it if they'd like. But FBA, obviously, Amazon tends to be folks' best recourse to recoup revenue. You're going to get your highest average sale price on Amazon. So if something is just new and can go back in, great. If it needs a new box, that's something we can accommodate as well if you have access to boxes. Or if, let's say, you're a shoe seller and your Nike box is damaged, depending on your risk tolerance, we're happy to put that into a cardboard box and ship it back in, depending on preference. So there's plenty of options there. We do all the shipment creation. We send it in. And then, that second option, eBay. So, and I think that's a frustration for a lot of Amazon sellers is, again, using the shoe example. Let's say you sold a $150 pair of Hokas, and the customer, opened the box, tried the shoes on once, untied the laces, and sent it back. And that product's no longer in new condition, but it is absolutely not a worthless product. So being able to find another outlet to sell, not new inventory is, I think, a big value add for folks. And, there's obviously a spectrum in terms of what products sell well used. So you have, shoes on one end of the spectrum where there's a lot of demand for used shoes, and you get a good chunk of your sale price back on that. And then on the other end, there's groceries. So, folks aren't stopping by and checking out eBay for used groceries. So there's obviously a spectrum there, but that's essentially how it works is, can we file reimbursements? Can we send back to Amazon? And can we list on eBay?
Perfect. And I know that there's going to be a cost for this kind of service, but how much time and revenue are you typically recouping for your clients? If you have those kind of numbers handy.
Absolutely, yeah. So based on what we hear from our clients, it depends a lot on the specific category, but with categories like shoes, we can be as high as 60% of your sale price. So that's a very significant cost recovery. And tools are another really good category that sells well, home, kitchen, things like that. I would say a good range is anywhere between 40 and 60% of your sale price. So, and then again, on the opposite end of that spectrum is grocery and things like that, where, unless you can send it back new into Amazon, you're not recouping any of your revenue. So,
right. Yeah. And if it's sitting at your home or, in your own warehouse, you're not recouping that revenue either, which
absolutely,
I think that's I've heard people say to me, well, I could use a service, but it's going to cost me money. But then they let their inventory sit for 6 months, and so now you've got money sitting there, on your
Yep.
floor essentially. Number one, you've got a ton of opportunity cost because
Mhm.
you're not taking that revenue or that capital back into the business, even if it's a lower amount.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's just you're storing stuff that is an eyesore.
Yeah,
Um, so
absolutely.
I know I have a couple of friends who are international sellers
Mhm.
who work with you guys. Are there any unique challenges that like international sellers face, and how can you help them?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the main challenge for international sellers is, folks in the US can at least accumulate a death pile in their garage, in their basement, wherever they can receive these returns. With international sellers, you have no choice. You have to have a US based return address to sell on Amazon in the first place. So we see a lot of folks just paying their prep center to store their inventory and getting
Hmm.
absolutely nothing back from that. And as far as challenges, I would just say setting up an eBay account is a very common pain point. It's 100% possible. You just have to do it the right way, and
Hmm.
that's something we can help with. But eBay has its own challenges, and as an international seller, you just have to be careful to
Hmm.
set it up correctly.
And so you guys list on the seller's own eBay account, and you'll help them if they have trouble setting it up. That's kind of
Exactly.
nice.
Yep.
Um, and that's fascinating. Um, I mean, I'm curious, what is like the perfect client for you guys look like?
Yep. So I mean, a perfect client depends on volume and category. So, there's somewhat of a threshold for using our service. If you're selling 1,000 units a year, excuse me, our service probably doesn't make sense for you. Um, so more volume, the better. And there's certain things we can do with cost to accommodate that.
Hmm.
But then a lot of it has to do with category. I think, like I had mentioned, we help folks. There are certain categories on Amazon that, number one, have a very high return rate. Categories like high fashion can have as high as a 30% return rate. So, yeah, I know this no longer is being sold on Amazon by third-party sellers, but Coach is a good example of that.
Hmm.
You're going to get a lot of returns if you're selling Kate Spade, Coach, things like that. So those folks are hurting. Shoe sellers get a lot of returns. Really, the clothing, shoes, and accessories category gets a lot of returns.
Hmm.
But we do best with folks that there's a market for their products to be resold. Um, not in new condition is, I think, the best way to answer that question. And I think a lot of OA sellers they don't sell in one category specifically, and maybe you do a little bit of grocery, maybe you do a little bit of shoes, maybe you do a plethora of different categories, and that's fine. We tell folks on the front end, look, there are going to be products that aren't going to make sense for our service. Based on our fees, if you send us an item that has a new sale price on Amazon of $10, you're not gonna do well on that.
Hmm.
So average sale price on Amazon is an important metric. We tell people to shoot for, if your item is over $35 new sale price on Amazon, it probably makes sense to send to us in unsellable condition. Um, but if it's under that, and in certain categories, it doesn't necessarily make sense. So yeah, I think that answers that question for the most part. And I think also folks that are just looking to outsource this issue. I think in addition to the cost savings and the revenue recovery, it's a huge time issue. And I think that's why a lot of folks accumulate a death pile in their house. I think a good example I like to use is FBA. Our fees are somewhat similar to fulfillment by Amazon.
Hmm.
We've kind of modeled our structure based on fulfillment by Amazon. And, you use that service because of what it offers. It allows you to outsource that part of the business. You don't have to have a warehouse. You don't have to have dedicated staff to do fulfillment. You don't have to interact with the customers. I think we're another kind of variation of that, at least in the returns part of the business. Is you don't need a warehouse. You don't need employees. You can use us. And so I think when you're calculating, hey, what can I sell profitably through FBA? It's a similar kind of way of thinking with our service.
Okay. Yeah, I like the way you break that down. Yeah. If if someone wants to become a client, what does your guys' onboarding process look like? And I'm also curious, like, what kind of support can somebody expect from you guys?
Yep. So in terms of onboarding, it's as quick as you'd like it to be. We can get you signed up same day. And we could talk about later kind of how to do that specifically so you can take advantage of the discount we have for Clear the Shelf. But that piece of it is very seamless. We unfortunately, some of the onboarding, I guess, if you've ever tried to change your return address on Amazon, it can be very difficult. There's just about 4 different places you need to change it to make sure you're not getting any returns at your old address. So we have detailed videos of how to do that, how to give us permissions. So that part of it is fairly streamlined. And then as far as support goes, I mean, I guess I can brag because I'm not involved in the customer service part of our operation, but I would like to say we do a great job. I think you'd expect a same day or next day response from us. And, some of that is important when you're dealing with selling your inventory D2C, on eBay. You're just going to get, hey, I put the wrong shipping address, or I did this, or I did that. So, we are here to help through the whole process.
Perfect. You mentioned return fraud, and we know that it happens. How often are you getting those kind of things reimbursed from Amazon for the seller?
Yeah. So there was an NRF, that's a National Retail Federation study done on e-commerce as a whole, and they clocked return fraud at 13% of all returns. So
that's crazy.
And I would say it's similar. I would say that matches up exactly with what we see internally. And if we're catching a reimbursement, we're getting reimbursed almost every single time.
Oh, nice.
The only real variance is how much of that sale price are you getting? So if it's a damage that happens to, let's say a shoe, for example, for whatever reason, Amazon feels that it makes business sense for them to ship their shoe removals in poly mailers, not poly bubble mailers, not boxes, in poly mailers. And so if you remove any shoe in overstock condition and it is sent that way, the box is going to be damaged when it arrives at our warehouse. So with a reimbursement like that, where it's just the outer packaging that's damaged, you might see 25 to 50% of your sale price getting reimbursed. But if it's something like a switcheroo, you're going to be close to that 100% mark. So,
nice.
That's where the variance comes in. And I wish I could give you incredibly hard numbers on that, but as with a lot of things with Amazon, it's, again, their sandbox. I don't think that they know what they're doing in terms of reimbursement. So some of it depends on what customer service agent you get.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about if it's a damaged shoebox, you get 25 to 50%. I mean, then you get to go sell it on eBay too.
Yep.
So you get to double dip a little bit, which is
absolutely,
that's something that you may not do if you were handling it yourself. If you're handling that item yourself, you may be like, oh, well, this is my size. I can go ahead and keep these, or, oh, well, I got 50% back. I'm just going to let this sit for a while and not get to it and things like that. So that's a huge win. I'm just because I'm always curious. What are your guys' like plans for the future of Axiom? I mean, you just want to scale this thing to the moon with reverse logistics, or do you ever want to like add in something else?
I think as of late, we're still really excited about servicing OA wholesale businesses. I think at least with our own custom software, I feel that we have made some really great strides in terms of improving our accuracy, improving our revenue recovery. That's been a large focus. But then recently, we've been working with a lot bigger private label brands. And so something I think is really exciting about that is, we've gotten into some more of the analytics side. It's more the data part of the business. If we're working with a private label brand and, we're tracking this on a SKU basis. So I can see, hey, for this specific ASIN, 75% of the time when we get it back in unsellable condition, it's because, the zipper's broken. So we can go to that private label brand and say, maybe you need to talk to your manufacturer and beef up this, zipper because that's the common reason why it's coming back in unsellable condition. So I think that's something we're really excited about, is approaching reverse logistics from more of a data perspective.
Mm-hmm.
How can we provide that as a service? How can we provide, returns consulting? Because there are best practices on Amazon to reduce your return rate. So I think it's
Mm-hmm.
looking at returns holistically and seeing how we can help businesses with this issue.
I like that. It's not necessarily a sexy like vertical for you to be in,
Yeah.
but it's fascinating. And I mean, you guys aren't going the way of the newspaper. Like e-commerce is growing every single year, which means reverse logistics is going to grow right along with it.
Yep.
Yeah,
It
that's
absolutely is.
fascinating.
9.49% annually is the number I heard. So
That's so crazy.
for any seller out there who thinks that it's too crowded, no, it's not.
Yeah. So this is one I'm just personally curious about. What's some of the most unusual or surprising items that you've handled as returns, or that you've gotten
Yeah.
instead of the product you were expecting, that you're allowed to share in polite company?
And that's the ticket there, is in polite company. So
Yeah.
that eliminates some of the returns we've had. But we've had some clients send us some inventory that we'd rather not touch. I don't want my guys inspecting used bidets, for example.
Ooh,
So that's
gross.
a product that we're just not going to touch. But I mean, as far as the switcheroos go, it's kind of unbelievable. I mean, we've had rocks come back in packages. What else? I mean, we've had some very interesting returns show up, and the packaging is always comical. I mean, we see a lot of grocery bags come through the door.
Oh, jeez.
We see some interesting stuff. So, but yeah, I think it's an issue for a lot of businesses. I'm not sure if you followed the story about that's the small business that they sold a diaper and it got returned as a used diaper, and Amazon restocked it in their inventory, and they got their account banned. But I mean, some of this stuff is you can't mess around with it, and especially we serve some clients that sell things like pillows, things of that nature, and those can be biohazards if they've been used. That's like you can't mess around with sending that stuff back to Amazon. So especially when there's hygiene involved in any of these products, it's something that you have to be really careful with, because again, we see some gross stuff. I mean, there's we see a lot of stuff come back reeking of cigarettes. I could go on, but it's definitely you never know what you're going to get. That's for sure.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
All right, I want to talk about some like tips or maybe best practices for sellers who they want to handle their own returns and they want to deal with their own unsold inventory. What would you tell those folks?
Yeah. So I guess, and I'm sure this is something that I'm sure you touch on in all of your awesome wholesale and OA tutorials and courses, but I think factoring in returns into your profitability calculations is really important. Just building that into how you're doing your costing, I think is super important. And I think it's something that a lot of folks miss. But as far as doing it in house, I think reimbursements are really important. Look at Amazon's terms of service, and identify those reimbursements as they come in, because there's very specific ways that you need to go about filing those reimbursements. Specific pictures that you need to take of shipping label and slip and the box at a certain angle and then another angle and the product. So I think identifying those is very important, especially if you're in a category like shoes where that's just going to come up a lot. But as far as managing it in-house, I think hopefully you're a whiz with Google Sheets and Excel, depending on how much volume you're doing. But yeah, I mean, can you send it back to FBA? Can you rebox it? Can you relabel it? Can you get it back in? And then, if it's a product that can be sold used, listing it on eBay, I think is a good way to go about recovering that revenue.
I know you talked about the fraud rate for returns, but any idea what the average return rate is across the board?
Yeah, so I think that same NRF study put it at 18.6, I believe, of all e-commerce sales are returned. So
that's
large
crazy
issue. It is, and I think it's unbelievable thinking about e-commerce as a whole still only being 20% of retail. This is something that is going to continue to explode, and e-commerce is going to continue to explode, and returns are going to continue to explode as well.
I mean, I know the number on Amazon is probably a little bit lower, and
I
Amazon
think so.
offers us, return insights now, which
Yep.
is if nobody has been in there yet, it's an incredible tool.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps me away from certain subcategories.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I don't mean this, in a bad way, but I will sell a men's shoe over women's shoes every day of the week because the return rate is significantly different. We're talking
Yep.
11% for certain men's shoes and 17 to 18% for certain women's shoes. Um, and I think one of the other things that people don't necessarily take into account is Amazon does not pay you back your fulfillment fee when you get a return. And two, there is a returns processing fee on like shoes and clothing.
Yep.
And for people who are big into shoes and clothing, I don't think that they necessarily factor that in on the front end, which is crazy important.
Agreed. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. I've got to ask because everyone's going to be curious, but if they want to have you take over their reverse logistics, handle their death pile, things like that, it's going to cost. Can you kind of talk high level of what people should expect as a customer of yours?
Definitely. So our pricing structure is based on a per unit model. So yeah, there are services out there that do things similar to what we do. And what we see a lot of times is, kind of a consignment model where, let's say they'll sell it for you and take 70% cut, you get 30, whatever the case may be. But, if you're selling anything over $35, you're getting, it's just not, it's not economical. So we charge a per unit basis and you can expect to be anywhere from $4.50 out the door to probably about $7, depending on the size of the product and the category. So it's usually somewhere in between that range. It also depends on how long you have it in our warehouse. If you sell it within the first week of it being listed on eBay, you're going to get charged less than if you sell it in 6 months of being listed on eBay. So, there's a bit of variance there. But that's stuff that we're very upfront about. There's no variable pricing structure here. So folks can look at those fees and decide on a, per unit basis if it makes sense to remove that product to us.
So I'm not going to get charged 70% commission when that thing sells, right?
No, you're not.
Yeah.
And again, it's as with a lot of things, there's some nuance to it. So if you're selling $10 products on Amazon, maybe you want to go with that 70% commission service. But if you're selling shoes and you're selling $70 pairs of shoes on on eBay used, you're going to be paying $35, $40 a unit. So I think it's really taking those things into account. Yeah.
I kind of like how you try to align the incentive for sellers to move through their things a little bit faster.
Yep.
And the reason is, and I don't know how many sellers think about this, but there is a cost to letting that capital sit in a piece of inventory that you already have to take less for. Like there's the opportunity cost of you not being able to use that capital in a better manner. There's a sunk cost if you don't get that money back. So I kind of like that. All right. You teased that people who are listening can get like a special deal. So what can people watching this get?
Absolutely. Yeah. So for people that sign up through Clear the Shelf, we are going to waive the first 3 months of your flat monthly fee. So no account creation fee, no flat monthly fee. We'll absolutely waive that and, only charge you on the per unit basis for the items that you send us. So, we're really happy to offer that discount. And, for anyone looking to sign up for that discount, you can just go to axiomprepcenter.com/clear the shelf. And if you sign up through that page, no promo necessary. We'll get you that discount.
Perfect. Yeah, that's gonna be down in the description of this video and all of that. And I've also got you guys all over on my website in the resources section as well. So yeah, listen, I have a dozen or so folks who I know have used you guys and appreciate what you do. I like what you guys are doing. So I appreciate you spending some time and chatting about this because it's not a topic that gets brought up a ton, but it's something that I think people need to think more about, especially as they're scaling their businesses.
Couldn't agree more.
All right. Thanks so much, Will. And for those of you who are here, make sure to check out AxiomPrepCenter.com/clear the shelf. And do me a huge solid to protect yourself from more switcheroos. Hit like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you.